Welcome to the Idle with Hands. I'm Lyle.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to be reviewing the new Alien game. Well, not the full game, but the teaser that you get if you
pre-order.
Pre-order,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
So. Yeah, if you buy it from Free League, they will give you instant access to the PDF for the cinematic starter. And so we'll talk a little bit about what the difference is between a cinematic adventure and the campaign that they have in the main book.
Okay. Yep. So we'll be doing a review of, the cinematic starter. And we're really going to be focusing on the cinematic game because we haven't seen the cooperative game that'll be in the full rules. Right. We are attached to the cinematic starter is an adventure called Chariot of the Gods. Mm-hmm. Hey, for fans of Charles Van Daniken.
Right.
Maybe recognize that that title. So there will be some spoilers when we do a review. If you're planning to run the game, by all means, continue watching because we're going to give some advice or some tips or things that we liked or didn't like about the Chariot of the Gods. If you would like to play, then please just contact your game master, the person that runs the games, and let them know, hey, watch this because we're going to make it that much better. So. And we're also going to be talking about Year Zero system because it's part of the Year Zero family, we'll say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, which is Free League's core system that comes from Mutant Year Zero.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so there's a D6 die pool system.
Yep.
And you've probably previously seen it with us reviewing Forbidden Lands or Mechatron.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And we also reviewed Tales from the Loop, but we hadn't played Tales from the Loop, which might be coming up soon. But.
Hopefully.
So I guess talk a little bit about the differences.
Yeah, so a brief rundown of Year Zero, and then focus more on what Alien's doing, and it is a cinematic starter, and they very much mean not like some games use cinematic meaning like movies or action movies or high adventure, but they're actually saying like an Alien film. So we'll be discussing whether or not the game captures being in an Alien film.
Just as an FYI, Lyle mentioned it earlier, but there is also Cooperative Mode, which is more of a traditional RPG style play for it. But that's not coming out until later next year?
This year. I think
this year.
Okay. Later this
fall.
year with the full rule set.
Yeah.
Right.
And if there's something that we know is significantly different from the cinematic versus cooperative, because they do mention some things in the starter, we will highlight that. So
the Year Zero system relies on D6s. And so basically you're adding an attribute score, which is usually like 1 to 6, plus a skill that will give you a few more dice, and then gear that will also assist you in combat or some activity. And those dice need to be separate because you need to keep track of damage to gear or actual damage to yourself if you fail. Because the other part of the mechanic is that you can, if you have no successes, so you basically roll a 6 is a success, a 1 is a failure, and you have the ability to roll again. But depending on the system, that has different consequences. So you have one push.
They call it pushing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So one push for each of your rolls, and you get to keep all of your successes, potentially add more successes, but you also keep the ones. And the ones on a push then turn into damage, either damage to your gear or damage to the attribute that you rolled. Mm-hmm. So the way that Alien is different is it doesn't separate. You basically only have core dice and stress dice. And you just need to keep track of those two different colored dice. So all of your skills, attributes, and gear just give you core dice. So you don't actually take damage specifically to attributes or anything regarding the individual components of that roll. They're all together. But it is the stress dice that when you fail, trigger what they call panic rolls. So as your stress level builds, you keep rolling on a panic chart, a list of effects. And once you get to a certain level, physical things start happening. And once your stress is high enough, it starts to interfere with the ability to actually successfully make rolls. Your rolls are discounted.
That stress mechanic isn't in any of the other Free League systems that I've played so far. Is it only in the Aliens?
I believe so. It's the first time that I've seen it in the Year Zero system. Yeah, that's the first time.
It's a very good decision on their part. It really helped lend to that kind of sci-fi horror feeling, having your characters freak out on dice rolls and such. So.
Right, and it's something that you need to kind of manage because the the thing that stress does is it actually makes you a little bit more proficient or a little bit more successful, but at a higher risk.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of pushing your luck, because a success on a stress die is still a success, but a failure, a 1 on a stress die, does actually cause
freak out, man.
damage. Yes.
Yeah, it triggers. I mean, so what you do is the trigger, and it is a significant part of the game. So I guess we'll focus on that first.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then you have to roll on a panic table, and what you do is you take a d6 and you add the number of stress dice that you currently have. So let's say you had 2 stress dice. So you'd roll the d6 and add 2. And then let's say you rolled a 6 and then you looked at what an 8 is. And then you would follow, I think, an 8. We've rolled that a number of times. Is that tremble?
Right. I think
Yeah.
so.
And then you follow what it says a tremble. Obviously, you're trembling. But then there's also consequences. You can roll on the panic table, and I believe it's 6 and under, and there's no effect. You keep it together,
Right,
say.
right.
Yeah, so... And yeah, this is a significant part of the rules that we've seen. So at least the cinematic rules. To the point where the combat section is not called combat, it's called combat and panic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, stress and panic is a significant part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably get maybe a little bit more detail when we walk through the different sections.
Mm-hmm.
Also similar to Year Zero is, or at least Forbidden Lands.
Right.
Because we played that and we really noticed that is the idea of consumables.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be what you imagine. Water and food, and also they have power and air.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like imagine you have a tank, and then when you reach certain steps, like for example air, if it's every turn you would roll, or every time you do something strenuous you make a roll. And what that is if you have in each of your consumables you have let's say you have a 5, then you have 5 dice in which to roll, and if you roll any failures, and it's continues just like everything else,
right.
1s are failures. Here there's no successes. I mean, everything's a success as long as it's not a failure when it comes to air. But if you roll a 1, then your dice pool reduces by 1. Or if you roll 2 failures, I guess it reduces by 2. Right. So let's say I rolled the 5 or the 5 dice. I get 1, 1, 1, 1. Now my pool is reduced to 4. So the next time I roll, I only have 4 dice. So I guess in theory, statistically, it becomes harder to lose air, but your pool, I mean, you have less air to lose. And you know, I mean, we'll talk about the adventure and how things play, but when you have 1 air, it's pretty easy to lose 1 air.
So that's a rough overview of the system. Is in keeping with the other Year Zero systems, such as Forbidden Lands and Mechatron, it has 4 attributes, which are strength, wits, empathy, and agility. I'm probably reading those in the opposite order that they should be written. So strength, agility, empathy, and wits. But
Still in the wrong.
they're in a diamond shape on the character sheet. Give me a break.
It doesn't matter.
So they kept that part of it the same. It is Mechatron had it differently, where they just renamed them, but mechanically it still was the same.
Mechatron was actually quite a departure, where they renamed all of the attributes, and because Mechatron you play robots, you can only take physical damage, whereas in a game like Forbidden Lands, you can take physical damage, mental damage, emotional damage.
Empathy. Emotional. I guess it would be emotional.
Emotional damage. Yeah. Which, I mean, it's a damage. Yeah.
And a huge shout out to Freely. I think that's wonderful for all of their different properties. They really mix up their system and add in rules that they like, add in things, take out things that that don't fit the genre so well. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it makes it a little tough to follow the game because I'm used to this thing and then the rules have changed on me. But overall, it's towards making a better game, and I really like that.
No, that's a good point, and I like that they don't change it just to change it. So in Alien, you know, it's empathy because that's the standard. There's I mean, could you call it something else? You know, keeping it together or something.
Yeah.
So there was no reason to. In a game like Mechatron, there's very much a reason to change all the names. But here, no, to keep it as is. Yeah. But their big thing is, you can take physical damage, and that's tied to your strength. but it's mostly about like the stress and
Right. Yeah.
consequences of that.
Right.
Yeah, because similar to Tales from the Loop, losing all of your health doesn't kill you. That's not a thing. That it's actually the injuries that you receive from attacks, or the injuries you receive rolling on the critical rolls table, that can actually end your life. I mean, you can, if you're broken and reduced to 0 and people just abandon you, you can heal yourself, but you are going to be in a very weakened state. But it's not supposed to kill you, losing your state. So that state of broken, which is the same thing that they use for Tales from the Loop, follows through, and then it relies heavily on the stress to take you out of the game.
Okay, so that's like an overview of year 0 essentially. So now let's talk about Alien, and I'd actually like to open with the design. Yeah.
Okay.
What was the first thing you noticed? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Of the book.
Yeah, sorry, like the graphic design, the art.
Right.
What did you think about that? Like, do you think just from the art or the cover and the layout, did that kind of capture Alien for you? Like,
Yeah, well, for me, that was the reason that I pre-ordered, is because I saw the art that they were using. The artist that they used basically looks like he's doing concept work for a new Alien movie. It's really gorgeous work. And so that drew me in right away. And it gives you the atmosphere. There's no old school, black and white line art or anything. It's all digital painting. And so it really feels cinematic.
and just because, both the graphic design and the lead artist, I think were really, really good and really capture Alien. I just want to give him a shout out. Martin Grip is the lead artist, and the graphic designer, or the main graphic designer, is Christian Graneth.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think they really did a good job with that. Yeah, and to such an extent where they have a limited edition cover for the main rule book. But why anybody would get that?
Right,
because the cover for the main book is so good.
Yes.
And has no disrespect for the limited edition, but you know how they often, when you do a limited edition cover, you're like, oh, we'll have a deluxe fabric or deluxe materials on the cover, like maybe like a faux leather or something like that, and then a very simplistic design. But then you're like, nah, that regular cover is just so good. Like, and the art is not only not line art, but it's also consistent.
Yes. Right.
And some of it's not necessarily photorealistic, but either from sometimes it looks like a still from a movie,
Right.
And then you look at it more closely, and no, it's just kind of just really captured. And definitely, you would think like some of the really good role playing books is you look at it and you're like, I want to play this scene.
Right.
now.
Yeah. I think it's nice that they chose this style, because it blends the eras of the movies together. Because we're talking about late 70s all the way into the 2000 teens,
Right.
and that's going to look very different. But when it's a little bit more a looser, more painterly style, then you give the feel, but you don't see the detail, and you don't see, well, they didn't have that in Alien.
Right.
Right. That's a good point.
But our one complaint about the PDF is kind of a practical complaint. Printing the character sheet is not really possible. Printing handouts for the players, because each of the players, because you're playing NPCs you're playing pre-gen characters in a cinematic adventure, and there's information, kind of a little bit of background description of their abilities on a sheet, and it's just not practical to print it out when it's on black.
Yeah. So we didn't say that. It's like
Yes.
instead of white pages, it's black pages.
Yep. It's like a space background.
Right.
For reading it, they do a good job. I mean, sure, the table of contents is white on black. So I don't think most people kind of agree they don't want to read an entire book like that. So there are some things like the title page for a chapter, like Space is Hell, is white on black. But then once you get into actual important information, they do like the little, like the file cards. Like
Right.
how you describe it? You'll know it when you see it. Wait, how would you describe that? They're almost like they're like little...
Yeah, kind of like windows, like popped up windows.
Yeah, like pop-up windows. Yeah.
In graphic design, we use a special term for it. It's called a box.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah. So they use boxes that are light gray. So then it's black on light gray, like a really light gray. So they're actually... It's really good, but I find it helps... I mean, it certainly adds to the page count, because there's a lot of... You would normally say white space, but black space on there. But yeah, these boxes direct you, okay, this is what I need to read. Everything else is flavor.
Right.
For the most part. Sometimes there are like some important information. Well, maybe that's a bad thing because you might skip over stuff. But yeah, like things like a quote from the movie. Yeah, I mean that's done in white on black. That's great. But yeah, all the game or the vast majority of the game rules is on the black on light gray.
Right.
So you can read it. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if everyone's using a tablet, that works okay.
Yeah.
But if you want to actually print something physical out, like the maps, and the maps are something you have to use, that becomes a little troublesome. So people have inverted the color, so it's pink on white instead of green on black.
Yeah.
And have done a few workarounds. And we actually built a printer-friendly character sheet because it needed the character sheets for all of the players plus the NPCs handy because you might switch up.
And the ship maps as well.
Yes,
and
right.
they mention like just how important like maps are, and that seems to be the default. Like when you're getting into a conflict, they'll say like you're probably going to use a map or something like that.
Right.
So there is stuff like that available, and yeah, I think Free League. I mean, certainly people can make their own, but Free League should certainly be looking into both the regular version and the printer friendly version that a lot of companies will produce when they have something that's very stylized.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think that interesting you mentioned that about the maps. There's a section as well that describes about how to play without a map. So that's definitely not a required part of it.
But it's so small.
Yes, it is. Well,
it was like yeah.
That was actually one of my.
And actually, it might not even be in the box. It might be one of those examples where it's like you might want to play on a map or
the
theater of the
that
mind
is
outside
not
the
in
box.
a box. This, like other Free League games, uses a zone system. So there's no like 5-inch or 5-foot squares or positioning or anything like that. So I don't think a map is at all necessary. But
no,
they do include it.
All right, so we just follow the book and the order that they do it. So like. They open them up with Space is Hell, and that kind of gives you an idea and a little bit of a teaser of what the full world of Alien is like. And people might not know, but I think it's the early 90s, an actual role-playing game that came out for Alien. And yeah, I remember I only played it once, but then you're like, hey, is there anything else we can do with this game besides the bug hunt? Right. So yeah, they give you some ideas, and you can kind of I get some hints as to what the full game is going to be. Yeah, because like they talk about frontier life, and they give like 3 basic styles, like the space trucker style, the Marines, and then the company agents.
Yeah. Oh, I'd say in addition to that, there's also the colonists, like
the colonists. Sorry, actually, the company agent is like a type of person you could play. I think it was like. Yeah, the colonists, the space truckers, or the Marines are kind of like the 3 main styles of play.
Well, I think the corporations are their own large factions. I think playing a corporate style game is also definitely an option.
They don't get into it too much, but I definitely think so, and I think we're going to see that in the rule book. Like the corporate agent is like a core person that you can play, and then they also have they outline some main factions. So of course they have some of the main corporations like Weyland-Yutani, which is from the movies, but they kind of like go through. But then they have like sort of like the American,
the
American
United Americas.
Then they have the socialists, the Union of Progressive Peoples,
That's it.
the United Americas, and the Three World Empire. The Three World Empire is the UK, Japan, and several developing countries, and Weyland-Yutani comes from that one.
Right.
But they are part of everyone. The Colonial Marines come from the United America,
Of course.
So, but you can start to see that. Yeah, especially I was surprised. Like I'd never read. I've read like maybe a couple comics, but everything else is mostly about my knowledge is from the movies. So I don't know if the Union of Progressive People is new.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
but it certainly gives you a new dynamic in which to play.
Absolutely, yeah. They set it up where there's a lot of tension between the different groups as well, and they hint at different flashpoints. So there's ideas where you could have a war between 2 different government colonies.
Yeah, I mean they explicitly say it's like everything's on the brink of war,
right?
And that's why Weyland-Yutani is like so intent on getting or weaponizing the xenomorphs.
Right.
So it kind of gives a motivation. Hey, they're not just an evil corporation. They're there too. No, they are. Sorry.
They're not just an evil corporation. They're an evil empire too.
But they're an evil corporation with like a motive that makes sense. You know. They're just kind.
Also, part of it is the timeline. It's not right after. It's a few years after the third Alien movie, after which one of the prisoners from the third Alien movie wrote a book publicizing about the horrible monsters that Weyland-Yutani was smuggling through the prison. So aliens are not known, but they're rumored to be out there, and there are colonies disappearing and things suddenly nuked and corps doing shady things all over the place. So yeah, they're kind of digging into it a little bit. So it's quite an interesting time to be alive.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, so any of your characters' experiences in this world, nobody else is going to believe. You'll be in kind of Ripley's position where people are like, no, everything's fine. We have not seen any xenomorphs. And maybe it's in the best interest of them to not be talking about it, especially if they're weaponizing it. So yeah, you're always going to be...
Yeah, and I double check. Yeah, company reps are the fourth. So it is like the colonists, the frontier people, the space truckers, the Marines, or the company reps are kind of like the four careers, they call it.
Right. And of those, they really seem to focus on the colonial life a lot.
The frontier life.
The frontier life, yeah.
Which sounds like it sucks.
Yes, sir.
Like, why are you here? Yeah, but hey.
Well, but they say that there's people who were just lied to. The company promised them riches beyond their wildest dreams. So they settled off world. There are people who are just explorers, so they want to see what's out there. And there's people who are like gold miners in the Old West. They're out here to make it big. Some do, most don't. Those kind of things. But yeah, all the different factions bumping against each other. It's really a lot of fodder for your imagination to think up ideas, and I had a lot of adventure ideas popping up in my head when I was reading it. Every single one, of course, included an alien showing up midway through. But
well, I mean, the game. Well, that's a good time to move on to the next section, then, which is role-playing Alien. And well, in our game, Jeremy was the GM, which is Game Mother.
That was really clever. Yeah, I like that.
I jest because I'm jealous. Yeah. So people, familiar with the movies, they know Mother is the computer. So I think what is it? MUTHAUR something.
Right,
yeah, but Mother, and they affectionately call Mother. So so that's the game master. So there's that, and then there's the two game modes, and one we're going to be focusing on is cinematic play. And like we said at the beginning, that's focusing on it's playing an Alien movie. And then the campaign play, I was calling it cooperative earlier, but yeah. Right. And the reason why I was calling it cooperative, because in the cinematic play, they do have specific rules for player versus player, because they figure, hey, that happens in the movies, so it's going to happen in the games. Whereas in the campaign play, they don't have those same rules, because they figure that you're going to be more cooperative in trying to solve the problems. So.
They don't know our group.
Yeah. I mean, we did have an antagonistic game. How much was that? What was the rules? How much of it was?
It was us.
Us. Well, I'll disagree a little bit, but yeah, because some of the agendas seem to set up, and you do have agendas in the cinematic play. Then they do say they'll be publishing more cinematic scenarios. In the years to come.
They did make one for Gen Con this year.
Yeah.
So they're doing a Hadley's Hope-based cinematic.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
From the Aliens movie.
Right. Yeah. So hopefully that'll be included, or that'll at least be downloadable at some point. That'll be fun.
Yeah, so you're playing like a prequel to the Aliens movie. Isn't that Alien? No. Sorry, the movie that Bridges. So, yeah, no, and I think if they were smart, they would make these like scenarios self-contained.
Right.
Kind of like a quick start rules and the adventure. So people don't necessarily have to buy the full game. They can get these standalones, and hopefully that's enough of a taste that they're going to want to play the main game.
Right.
Yeah. So you had a question prior. I mean, would people be happy
playing the aliens with the aliens? Yeah.
Playing an alien game without aliens. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's as I mentioned just before, almost every scenario that I thought up had wildly different settings. Some was like a civil war between two of the factions on a colony, or one of the space trucker things within the corporate zone, so kind of the corporate intrigue. But everything I thought of, it obviously doesn't have to have an alien in it. I mean, you can definitely have fun with a Civil War game, but it's aliens, you know? Every scenario I thought up, an alien popped up in my imagination for it. So would you, if you were running this, how often would you use aliens? Would you feel compelled to use them because that is the game? Do you think you would enjoy playing an alien game without an alien in it? How many times can aliens show up before it kind of gets boring?
Right.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's possible with the way they're setting up the politics of the world. It's possible to background the aliens a little bit so that the alien technology or samples or proof of the aliens is something that happens where you're not actually fighting aliens, where it's just kind of humans versus humans, you know, colonists versus space marines or whatever, because there can be kind of, you know, government actions or corporate actions that, you know, are key events in sessions, and just because that can be the complication, you know, the existence of aliens or, you know, the motivation of certain NPCs based on that, I think could be interesting without actually having to confront and having combat with the aliens. But keeping it there, I think, is still a good flavor.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope the full rules has an even more ideas on how to play it without aliens. They talk about key themes and space horror. Yeah, I think probably you're going to need like aliens or something like aliens or variations of it. I mean, in the game, they have xenomorphs and neomorphs and things like that. Then sci-fi action, you know, I think if people were playing Marines and they were fighting other kind of Marines and stuff, I think that could be satisfying. And then sense of wonder. And I mean, if you think about the opening of, not necessarily the opening, but early in the Alien movie when they seen like the giant, and that's another rumor, is these giant spacefarers. And I guess that's an alien, but it's not what we were talking about when we mean aliens. But I think that could just like exploring, like who are they, and you know, just doing something that exploring without a face hugger jumping out at you, I think could be a really satisfying game.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, there's androids or synthetics in the game, and you could even do something like Blade Runner, and what if they rebel and things like. Yeah, no, I really hope that the campaign, the main rules, and really, you know, really explores that, where you can play like full on campaigns that aliens are in the background or not even in the story. Conversely, I think when you'd have cinematic play, because they're actually explicitly saying, and I don't know if they're going to walk back from this, it's like playing in an alien movie. You need your aliens.
Right.
And it's not like, oh, remember there was that alien in that science lab that just kind of sat there dead, dissected? Oh, yeah. No, fair enough.
That was it.
Thanks. Yeah. No. Oh, yeah. Now I do feel like we're in an alien movie. Jackass.
Yeah.
I don't know. To answer my own question, I thought the campaign play I was imagining was one that does center around the aliens, but kind of as they're introduced into the universe. Starts out as a rumor, you have some kind of mission where you find out they're real, hired by the company to hunt down more, maybe exterminate the threat, kind of thing. So I think even with just having, even if it revolves around the aliens, you could still have a lot of variation within that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying never have an alien. Like, I hope campaign play never touches the alien, but no, I think you could do more. Like, it's not, for example, set on a ship or a confined thing. Like, I mean, if you look at Aliens, and Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, but they're all like pretty much in confined situations. So I imagine cinematic, or the cinematic play also might play on that. Like, it's confined. A lot of horror, if you're talking about space horror, one thing is like you can't escape.
Yeah.
Right.
So they'll play on that, whereas campaign play, I think,
if you can't escape,
your
campaign's going to be pretty short.
Yeah, your campaign is set on this ship, and it's like, and we wake up again. Yeah.
So a question that I had about this is, and also why I'm always reluctant to, you know, invest or be interested in IP-based systems and games, is they are limited by the terms of that license, like how much original material they can produce, how much they can use. So that is going to have some effect on you know, what's going to be in that core book and how far they're going to push what you can play. Can you play just a colonist, and can you, basically just explore? And also in the cinematic adventure, there are a lot of rules for scientific examination and, discovery and kind of examination. And we didn't really get into that because it becomes much more of a survival situation or a horror situation where you're not going to stop and let's see what this thing is and let's find out. So obviously they want to maybe open that up in the full rules to have more science-based, so that you're actually gaining information that, may be useful. Or
I was surprised looking at the adventures, how much stuff they had in there. There's lots of information on each of the different rooms in the ship. There are different options and trees. Now I was thinking, who has time to do this? Because you're being chased by an alien. Your ship is on an explosion countdown. Who is investigating the science lab?
It makes it really fun to run when every single room you're like, wait, which room are you in?
Yeah, no. So we don't know the limitations, but I'm very interested to see the full rules.
Yes,
and I hope they have enough where people go, hey, Wayland Yutani, it's not just about aliens.
Oh yeah.
It's also about, I don't know,
money.
Healthcare. But not curing diseases, but just treating the disease, because that's more profitable. Yeah.
Right.
And then they get into the tools of the game. D6s, as Jeremy said, like all Year Zero games, they have their own dice, which will have like a special.
Yeah, so your stress dice have the face hugger on them, symbol. And
a targeting reticle maybe for the success?
I think it's some kind of star, like a starburst or something. Yeah. The success is a happier symbol.
Oh, and we didn't mention about cards.
Oh,
like
right.
The initiative system.
Yes.
So you draw cards, and that tells you what order. And in some games, such as Mechatron, the cards were a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
So they're definitely worth the investment to buy the cards because you make up your robot using the cards. And that was kind of cool. But they were saying that these cards would have cure and stuff.
Right. And they're going to have so gear decks and weapons so that you can actually see the stats of your weapon. And so if you drop it, you can actually just discard the card to make it more easy. So you're not actually referring to a rule book to see, what changed because you picked up this weapon and dropped this weapon.
Right.
It also uses numbered cards for initiative as well.
Yeah.
Though obviously you can just use regular playing cards for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And in Year Zero, what you do is, you just, Game Master comes around with deck cards, you pull out a card and
pick a cat.
And unlike some games, you don't what you got from initiative for that conflict is what you'll have for each subsequent turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Though there are mechanics to swap those around and change, redraw, etc.
Yeah, one thing if you get extra successes, one option is when you do get successes that exceed the number that you need, depending on the skill, you get like stunts. Right. Some of the stunts can be specific to the particular skill. But like one common option is you can change your initiative.
So because these are limited rules and they're just focused on playing a cinematic adventure, there's not character creation. So you're playing a pre-generated character that kind of fits all of the roles that you would see in a movie. There's people that are running the ship, there's a captain, there's a pilot, and there's corporate presence, right? Yeah, so they explain to you in the rules about those careers, but you aren't actually creating those characters yet until you have the full rule set.
Yeah, if you look at them, I think they all follow the same pattern. Like it's for your abilities, it was 5-4-3 or something, or 5-4-3-2.
Sorry, I didn't see.
Oh, okay. Like one of your abilities has 5.
Right.
So people are like, reverse engineering and say, maybe they're going to give you this many points in which to spread.
Right.
Or you could do quick start rules, and you just like, okay, you get a 5-3 or 5-4-3 and a 2, and just assign those to each ability.
Right.
Yeah.
And careers would have access to different skills. So of course you'd want higher strength if you're combat and higher empathy if you're corporate or.
And you get 12 skills?
Yes, I think the total. Yeah.
And they're what you would expect in a science fiction game. You got like comm tech,
computer tech.
Yeah, and you get like, of course, range combat, melee combat,
observation,
manipulation.
Yeah, pretty much your standard stuff. Let's see, command for the captains of the ship.
Right.
Medicine, survival, heavy machinery as well for your load lifters, of course.
And door breaking.
Door breaking, yep.
Yeah.
Piloting, and then mobility. And mobility is moving around, running, dodging, etc.
Right. And like in all the other Year Zero systems, it doesn't preclude you from actually trying to do something, even if you don't have the skill. You just roll the stat. And so you're rolling your attribute. So you're just rolling a much lower chance of success, but you can try if you want to.
Going into the skills, and Lyle mentioned it earlier, when you roll well and you get a large number of 6s on it, you can use those to pull off stunts. And I'm kind of wishy-washy in this, and I wanted to ask your guys' opinion as well about the stunts. Each different skill has a list of available stunts that you can do to it. As an example, in close combat, if you roll a stunt, you can possibly swap your initiative card with your enemy and change up the initiative combat. Whereas in shooting, you can't. You can force yourself and the enemy to redraw cards. So it's very interesting and cool that each different skill has a wider range of things that you can do. But on the other hand, I think the most common mistake we made was not remembering which stunt went where or
right.
pulling which up. And we kind of ended up just having a list of the standardized stunts that we were going with
Right.
to go with that. So what did you guys think about those?
I think varying them is good. And I think if we had a reference, like a player reference or something that would have had those more convenient, I think we would have done better, because it does make sense that, a ranged attack could produce, different side effects if it's incredibly successful. Like, someone's pinned down as opposed to, disarmed, or so the kind of distance that the attack is and kind of what you're performing is, I think it did enough to separate, the skill. So it's not always, I guess, unlike how we ran it, it's not always +1 or additional damage or.
Well, I mean, additional damage, is good for combat, but if you're manipulating somebody, you might not. Okay, you really manipulate them.
Super manipulative.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I think it's fine to have the specialized stunts for each skill, or the specific stunts for each skill. But yeah, you got to get familiar with the game.
Right.
And I don't know if this is a Year Zero feature, but it's definitely something for Alien. It's definitely a game where you might want to have a bunch of cards in front of you. But I think a lot of role-playing games are becoming that, where there's like so many specialized abilities and things like that. There's a lot of extra rules. It seems like a very Year Zero is actually a fairly simple system.
Right.
And the stunts, we see that in what's it called? It started with the Dragon Age IP, but Green Ronin, then they went to like Fantasy Age. I guess the Age system.
Right.
But yeah, they have like the stunts mechanic. Like everybody wants. Hey, I don't want it just to have the +1 or +2.
Right.
I want it to do something more. I want more choices. So I can see it's following that design.
What was it? Exalted did that. White Wolf's Exalted had stunts. I think that's the first time I remember seeing it.
Right. Okay.
Way back in the day. But,
and people see it like, oh, that's the evolution of like game design, is to have that. And I think it's fine. But yeah, it does definitely have the downside, is like, I'll just take the bonus in the damage.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really remember.
Right.
And I think, there might be. Well, and a lot of times, like, I think, for the combat, it's easy to remember, but maybe like for the manipulation or other things, it's like, okay, what's the bonus give me? So
right.
I think they did
maybe
a better
cards
job
or something.
I think they did a better job with Forbidden Lands in that they had their skills and their maneuvers, but the stunts were more tied to the talents that you chose during character creation. So the player felt more of a responsibility. Like, they've already selected this one, they probably read through what the stunts are, so they have that information in them. Whereas this one, it's from reference in the book.
Yeah, if you look at like the 2D20 system, where you can use those to get momentum, and then they become like inspiration points in Dungeons and Dragons. So you just kind of spend it to get trigger something. I could, maybe that could be like a default or almost like a house rule. I don't want to like immediately put in house rules until I played the game a few times, but it's just like, okay, all right, let's just say you have an extra an extra die or like some sort of default for the stunts. You've got the extra successes. All right, how about we just push those aside for now? Let's keep moving. Because they do so many things well about the stress and the horror, and that it's definitely a game where you don't want to then, okay, stop, check the rules.
No, and I think I'm wondering if that's going to be a difference between campaign play and cinematic play, where they're going to confine things. They're going to say, here, this is the list. This is what you do with skills. When you haven't made a character, when you're using a pre-gen and you're playing a cinematic adventure, so that you're not actually referring to rules, but they may actually do something more like Forbidden Lands in the full rule set where you're choosing things, so you're going to know them.
That's a good point, because there isn't character creation in here.
Right,
so.
yeah.
That said, though, I don't think that there are too many stunts. I don't want that to sound like that's the actual criticism, because in a different game like Apocalypse World, the entire game is based out that. You roll based on a skill, and then you choose from a list of effects from that. Right. I think that the difference is that Apocalypse World is generally laid out on one piece of paper, whereas this one, it's across 10 pages in a book.
And give people like an idea. Mobility has 3 stunts, but then something like stamina has 4. Heavy machinery has 6 stunts.
Yeah. And some of them are really interesting as well, like observation. If you all of the stunts are follow-up questions that you can ask after you've made some kind of observation.
But so, you know something. Yeah. I mean, like they are interesting, and if people like read through the stunts, even if they can't remember, it kind of gives you an idea. Like, for example, heavy machinery, you gain a +1 modifier to a later skill roll relating to this. Okay, that's great. But then things like you act quietly, you show off, like those are the stunts. So it kind of gives you an idea of what you can do with stunts in general. So then, I mean, in the Game Master, if people are pretty decent at improving, it's just like, okay, what can I do with heavy machinery? Well, what do you think you could do? I don't know, like I really break the door down.
Yeah.
That's good enough. Yeah, it's gone. No one will be able to repair it. Or just like in the movies where, not only do I access it, but I can now pull the wires out so nobody else can unlock it, or something like that. It sounds good.
I think it's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I think just giving the player some spin action that they can adjust it how they like.
Yeah, because we were looking at the game John Carter, and they were like, I'm drawing a blank of what they're called, but the kind of like skills that you have.
Yeah,
but doesn't matter. We're not reviewing John Carter, but they were like very much create your own, and
the feats.
Yeah, the feats, and these are kind of like examples. Of course, you can choose these, but these are examples for you to create your own. Whereas, here is like they're giving us the examples, but they're saying these are the stunts. But it's very much you can also create your own stunt.
Absolutely,
as long as it makes sense. But I guess I would advise, like, kind of like if you're playing a wizard, like kind of read your spells, but you kind of have to read your skills a little bit more than playing World of Darkness or something.
Yeah, because
there it's kind of I know. Drive is drive, but what are drive stunts?
Right.
So, read through. You don't have a lot of skills, so read through them, and and you're not going to have all the skills. 12 skills, you're not going to have 12 skills.
Right.
So take a moment and read through your character and get some idea for your stunts, and maybe have a default stunt for each skill. Like if I can't think, I'll just I'll do that. Oh, you also get talents, as Chris mentioned. But unlike Forbidden Lands, and we'll see what campaign play is, but Forbidden Lands you get 3 talents.
It depends on your age.
But you get more than 1 talent.
Correct. Yes.
Whereas here, at least in the cinematic play, we all had one talent.
Right.
Which really, and it was given to us, so we didn't choose. But in the campaign play, maybe we would choose or something.
Yeah, I would hope so. Or when you're building your character, I think hopefully you can get a little bit more.
Well, if it's like Forbidden Lands, it was like it was tied to your
race and class and age.
So it's tied to everything. Yeah. So here it might be tied to, because I mean everybody's playing a human except if you're a synthetic or an android.
Oh, you can play synthetics, by the way.
Yeah. But like you may be tied to your career, and these are like you get 1, 2, or 3 talents based on your career.
I'd imagine so.
Yeah. And of course you get health. Health is tied to your strength.
Right.
And you also have your stress rating, and that's effectively going to be what we did is I'd have like a pool of white dice, which is a normal, and then we had our red dice. Jeremy had red dice, so we kind of we would mark it on our character sheet, but then we'd also like you could tell how many red dice we would have in front of us.
Right.
So
and that's nice because Forbidden Lands does make it a little bit more cumbersome, where you have 3 different colored dice, and you want to make sure so each roll you're gathering up a die pool. And it takes a couple more seconds to do that, but this is just how much stress, how many actual dice am I rolling in my pool, based on attribute, skill, and then any gear, and so that makes it a little bit quicker to make those rolls.
Yeah, I found that I'm not sure which one I like better. Maybe I like the less colored dice better. But one thing about Forbidden Lands is you certainly remembered your gear dice or gear die, because he was like, oh, I don't have that die or dice there. Usually it's only about 1 or 2.
Right.
It only adds about 1 or 2 to the pool, but I was often forgetting my extra die from my gun.
Right.
When I was shooting.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So. But then what I did is I would build. I kind of had my default pool for shooting because we got to that stage in the game. We were just shooting things. So I kind of had that was my default white pool, and then I had my stress for my red pool. But it was kind of like I can see both. I can't say which one's better.
Right.
I got a little confused when we were doing the armor rules, the defense one, because there was a dodge roll and a separate armor roll and such. And I think I remember Forbidden Lands being easier to remember because of different colored dice, but wouldn't go as far as to say that it was difficult.
Okay. Now, next up in Alien is the personal stuff. That's personal stuff. Your story points and your agendas.
Yeah, so I'm curious in the full rules if they're going to expand on that, because basically story points are only, you can spend one after a roll for a guaranteed success. Yeah. So that's the only mechanic right now that we were using it for. So yeah, I'm interested if they're going to, broaden that out at all, or if they're going to make it a little bit more nuanced, because in a cinematic adventure, you have acts, and you decide at the end of each act how you award story points. So in a campaign, I wonder how they're going to when they're going to come in. It's just end of a session, or
the way they rolled it, they really called that out. They said, for example, in the cinematic adventure, you can use your story points to gain an automatic success. So it sounds like there's either a plan to not use story points or to use them very differently in campaign. Obviously, that's just conjecture, though.
Right.
Yeah, the agendas. There, we were assigned the agendas because we were assigned the characters, and the characters came with 3 agendas. The default is to assign one agenda. Like, here's your Act 1 agenda, here's your Act 2 agenda, and at the beginning of each act.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I did it. I put everything on one sheet for the players, thinking that a little bit of forethought, like if they've already settled on that character, like I didn't want everybody to go through all the characters and read all of the agendas, but once they've decided on their characters, to read through the agendas to kind of see where they're going. Yeah, so they could kind of be setting up things ahead. And especially because in our sessions, we kind of blurred, like one session wasn't one act, things kind of blurred together. So you couldn't have revealing that would have been a little odd. We would have had to stop the session and then now everybody read the next agenda.
I mean, for my character, it wouldn't have made a difference. Each agenda logically followed. So I was a company agent, and just imagine what the company agent's agendas were, and that's what they were. And that's fine. I'm not complaining. I don't know about the others. I think Davis might have been a bit. The pilots agendas. I think
they were a bit all over the place.
The first 2 agendas I think may have been linked to their drug habit.
Well, the first one was God, space trucking is boring. Number 2 was I really need a fix. Number 3 was kill everything.
Yeah, so I thought that was
a bit of an escalation there.
So maybe that might have been fun for the person playing that. That it really changes, and then they have to change. Actually, if I have no experience being a drug addict, but maybe the fix comes on you quite quickly. So it's not a gradual build up. So then suddenly just an act, and you're just like, hey, I'm guys. I don't think they would say I really need a fix, but they would like abruptly change their behavior to go seek that, and then it leads to some discovery.
All in all, I think your decision, Jeremy, was a very good one. Because, for example, the Davis character, the drug addict, the mission for her was specifically when getting onto the second ship to go to this one specific room and raid that room for drugs. And that like it said, this is what you have to do for your agenda. If that had come abruptly, then obviously the player could play it that way, but our player John, he spent the time going to that similar kind of room on our ship first, and spending a lot of time just looking everywhere for drugs. He really brought that
I don't want to
get
too much into the adventure, but they were playing Agenda 2 right from the beginning.
Yes.
So,
but that's the thing, though.
Because we knew it, and one
doesn't that seem more natural?
But if sure, maybe it seems more natural. But if they've designed it like this is the first agenda for the second agenda. But if you're just going to jump to the second agenda, then I don't know, just sure, then give all the agendas. But if there's a reason to have that build up, then we're not going to know. You know what I mean? Like, and it was actually tough for that specific character because I guess we're getting into the adventure a bit, but we knew what the person's problem was outside of the game. For some reason, it got announced, or I think
because
out of character,
was a bottle of pills.
Yeah.
Something like that, and out of character, the player had mentioned what it was. So then we were kind of like pretending like we didn't notice that they were rooting through stuff because you're like, I don't want to get meta here, but also I was like, I don't really care.
Yeah,
it's a drug addict. But real big spoiler alert here. But another thing, I think it's a significant part of the adventure that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get in cinematic play, you get the agendas.
Right.
And
that's kind of just
campaign play. I guess you're going to choose some. I don't know.
Well, we probably won't have specific. I mean, you'll have like they do with the PCs, kind of your overall worldview or your overall like how you operate, just as a role play guide. Because the agendas, I think, are supposed to make the focus your role play and make your interactions much more deadly and much clash a lot more
in cinematic.
Yeah, in cinematic. Yeah, because they want they're keeping it confined and they're keeping it really tight and they want it to end rough. Whereas
and in the rules, they just for campaign play they say, hey, we're going to talk about it in the full rule book.
Yeah,
and then they have buddies and rivals. So. Which you don't always have. Like I didn't have any buddies. Like as a company agent, I had zero buddies.
How realistic!
Was on your side.
Yeah, but I had one rival, and that I don't know.
I gotta be honest, like that maybe it was just our group or the way we played, but this was a pretty non-event for me, a non-thing. It's like this other character's your buddy. I tried to play it, but it didn't really go very far.
I think there was a bit of ball dropping when I ran Mechatron. Whereas you had like relationships with like NPCs and that, and I misran that part. But I think that could have been more, or maybe actually this might be something that plays more in campaign play. Because you're right, it didn't like my rival immediately got eliminated, and then I had no buddies. You were buddies with somebody and it had zero factor in the game. In fact, I completely forgot you were buddies until like the first session. I'm like, oh yeah, you're buddies, right? Yeah. Because that person was totally buddies with the
other person,
the person that happened to be sitting next to them at the table. So
that person was buddies with their actual buddy.
Yeah, so it was kind of didn't play, and there didn't seem to be any reason to do it.
Yeah. I wonder if that was partially our fault. We're used to a lot of other games where you're part of the same adventuring party, so you work together to defeat whatever the thing is, and we kind of just naturally went in that groove. And I wonder if we should have played it more antagonistic.
The agendas trumped it.
Yeah.
Because my agendas and your agendas, they aligned more closely. I think. I guess.
Well, my agenda was help everybody, save everybody.
And I was kind of playing, hey, you're helping me, all right? We're buddies, and theirs was not helping or whatever.
Right. Theirs were get drugs and blow stuff up.
Yeah, so I think the agendas trumped everything. And I don't know, maybe that is something that could play
well more. And that was part of our first session too, that was a little bit of a difficulty. Instead of printing those black background character sheets so you all could have learned who your character was like completely with your ability and everything, and then who you're connected to and kind of your background, and then introduce that to the other players. We just kind of went through who everybody was, because the setup is you've been already working together for 6 months.
Right.
So this stuff would have come out, but the way I think the adventure wanted you to play it is you wake up out of cryosleep and then introduce yourselves to everybody that you've already So
that's how it opens.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they say that you're supposed to, but that those two things don't quite make sense, and to kind of get things rolling a little faster.
Let's talk about that.
Because
I absolutely agree. Like, I had actually read my card. I had actually read. I didn't read the adventure, but I prior to the adventure, but I had read the different NPCs.
Right.
So I was like, oh yeah, I think I want to play the company agent, and it said like the guy gets along with everybody.
Yeah, my agenda was this crew is your family.
Right?
Yeah, and it's like I get along with everybody. 0 buddies. Yeah.
Not to keep referring back to Forbidden Lands, but I think Forbidden Lands may have done that aspect better because they had agendas built into relationships. You choose one of the characters in your group, and then you choose your feelings towards them. For example, the Druids one, since I played a Druid, was this person is not careful around nature. You'll have to school them about it eventually.
Tales from the Loop does a good job. Definitely. I mean, it'd be hard to do. It's very much like the session 0 is like really dynamic, and you're picking like the relationships and stuff. So maybe, you know, if you actually pick it, I think it's going to mean something. In cinematic play, it's just like, whereas maybe in campaign play, it's going to be really important because you're like, you know, why are you together?
Yes.
Okay, you're rivals. You're not enemies, but you're rivals. Or maybe you have rivals that are NPCs, and then that gives the game master something to work with.
I hadn't thought of it myself, but I think you're absolutely right. I think it's the agendas and the buddies and rivals can clash between each other, and I think the agendas are more spelled out. It gives you a very specific kind of thing, and I think that would just overrule that.
Right.
So I think you're right.
Player versus player is very much a prominent part of cinematic play,
though not a prominent part of the rule book.
Yeah, right.
But we'll call it the trader rule, and they say in campaign play PvP is less common, so they're kind of resolved without specific rules. Right. But there is a rule here that after the player, I'll kind of read it out a little bit because it seems to be very important. If there's a PvP that goes beyond what they call a point of no return, like the GM calls it PvP, and you play out the current scene to the conclusion, and then the person who turned traitor, I guess, goes against the well-being of the party, then becomes an NPC. The game master takes their character sheet. Now they're an NPC. Then they'll have an option to play one of the NPCs that are still alive.
Right. Yeah.
So we did have that situation arise. But what do you think of that rule? Because when I first, or contrast it when I first read it, I said, "Oh, how elegant! Oh, it's so good that they have this rule." But because it was like, oh, it's very clear what happens when in the PvP. But yeah, what do you think?
I wasn't sure how that was actually going to work at the table and how frustrating that would be for the player. So immediately I thought, that makes sense, but I was worried how that would work at the table. If it would just taking somebody out and it's like, oh, here, now play this, might be frustrating. I
guess, I hadn't read it, I guess, that carefully when I first looked at it, but then I was looking at, play out the whole scene. So it's kind of like, I don't know does that prolong the PvP? Because let's play out the scene to its conclusion, which could be
somebody dies.
I'm going to kill you. But then also, like, what is the well-being of the party? Because if a party member is acting irrational and then you go to take them down, maybe not kill them, but to incapacitate them, because you think they're actually, in the long run, going to be the danger to the party, are you the traitor? So maybe I thought it would like avoid all arguments, but then I could see it just shifts. You're not going to argue about what happens once the game master makes the call that you are the traitor, because that's spelled out very clearly in the rules. But it could lead to some disagreements over who is the traitor in the situation.
That's a really good point, because you're going against, especially if you have agendas that are corporately driven and not really your personal decisions. You have to make a call. I guess whoever kills the other person is I was a company agent, and it's just like in the long run, it's like you do what the company wants, because if we show up, for example, empty-handed, the company's just going to like shoot us all, right? So this person is damaging what the company wants. You know what I mean? Like you get into those arguments. It's like, I'm not the traitor. I'm actually helping the majority.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I'm gonna have to be honest. This rule, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's just I can see the idea and I can see the impetus behind it, but it's one of those things is I can just thinking about it, I can see so many situations where it's too much of a gray area or it could be problematic at the table. So what if somebody's they're enjoying this player, they don't want to take it away, and it was just something momentary? What if it's two players who are equally just fighting and they start going at it? It's obviously player versus player. Which one do you take away? Do you just let them go at it? If someone, as you mentioned, if someone's following their agenda that might be they're playing their character to the hilt, but should that mean that they should stop playing that character? There
was also another wrinkle that manifested itself. if you delay, and you're probably not going to have people become traders until the third act. But by that time, like the NPCs whittle down.
Yeah.
So the people that they can conceivably play is that the pool is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Right.
Like we just so happen to have lost our captain straight away, like in the first, like I guess we would say the end of the first act. But yeah, so now no one can play the captain.
Right.
So that's there, and then we lost. Yeah, so you have a small pool of NPCs in which they could play, so that might not be satisfying. So. Yeah, and maybe having that rule, and this could be like kind of a meta thing. People are like, well, we got the trader rule, so someone's got to be a trader.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, hey, that's very in keeping because Burke and aliens and Ash and aliens.
It is genre appropriate.
But it could be not forcing, but encouraging a situation that maybe this rule doesn't resolve as smoothly as you would think.
Yeah.
Whereas in the campaign, if they're like, hey, we want you to resolve it as best as you can, that might be the best way to do it. And I would encourage, if people are going to play and play it with the rule, if you're playing cinematic play, because always like play the game the way they read
for sure.
I would just a recommendation if you're doing it, and it's something that we didn't do, no one thought to do it because maybe we all thought, oh, that's a decent rule, is talk about this rule in a session 0 and how you as the game master are going to interpret, turning trader, and what you see as playing out a scene into its conclusion. And if you are going to be super rigid on, and you're going to lose your character sheet, and you become an NPC, whether or not you get to choose or the game master is going to choose for you. And another problem I anticipated is like, the player then kind of takes, and okay, bad player, you can't write rules to get rid of bad players. But if they're kind of like a little bit miffed, then they play the NPC as just like a surrogate, and it continues the thing on.
Yes. Right. No, I think that's a really good point, because the only thing that they spell out that's going to trigger that trader mechanic in the adventure is the synthetic. And they don't say that a player has to be the synthetic. An NPC can be the synthetic, but that, is immediately triggered, and you don't get to decide. Like, you can't, oh, well, it's okay. We'll bring them over to our side, or, we'll there's nothing to deal with that. So I think that is a good point, especially if you're going to be having that. This is the line. You endanger any of the crew for your selfish motives, then you're a traitor.
Yeah, and we had a thing where, just specific, and I'll only talk about this because it might be something that people think is turning traitor. The person ran away, and you're like, okay, they're running away. Maybe they're running away to endanger us, but at what? Like, when are they turning traitor?
Yeah,
because running away doesn't necessarily make somebody a traitor, and that could be like a really rewarding character arc, because they sheepishly come back, and then like, wow, like Lieutenant Gorman in Aliens is like, he doesn't have the experience, but God, he's him and Vasquez, the respect, and it could be something like that. I did betray you. I mean, they could have done that in Aliens with Burke.
Yeah,
he's like, okay, I got out of the thing. I'm really sorry.
Well,
and then sacrifices himself to save Ripley and Newt and things like that, and you're like, oh, that's cool, like
yeah. And we're in a game with alien monsters and stress mechanics. I mean, a person running away from combat is not a big surprise.
right. But then a game master could say, well, you endangered the group by leaving them in danger because they were battling an alien at the time. But so at what point? And then it's like, they're running away. Are we going to play this out to its conclusion? They're now missing, and
we got to find
Is this the scene? Do we have to go hunt them down? You know what I mean? So so definitely talk about it, but also take a break. Why don't you do it? Swap the character sheets. Okay, everybody take a short break.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Let the person digest what this new NPC is.
Yeah. You can even bring it up with the characters at that point. Say, all right, from what I'm seeing, I'm thinking this might be a PvP situation. Do you agree? What do you think?
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think that's in keeping there, because then the game master's like, gives them a moment to kind of walk back.
Yeah.
And then, okay, you guys are going to do it. I'm calling it.
Yeah.
I think that's in keeping with the rules.
No, I think that makes sense. You are now entering PvP. Are you sure?
You're in a PvP zone.
I mean, it's really good. Verbally, if people really like things like X cards or something like
Red
that.
card.
You could have like like something visual, like where you don't want to interrupt the flow
Right.
of what's going on. I mean, this is a great scene, but this is how I'm seeing the scene, and you could put it's like a yellow card, red card kind of thing.
Right.
And again, I think that's within the spirit of the rules, where it's not changing it too much.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, it's a yellow card. Do we want to? Yeah, I want to continue.
Screw this guy.
Yeah, all right, do it. All right, do it. Okay, now it's red card. Okay, finish it up. Yeah, and then take a break, and then because PvP could, people are human, and just like
Or alien. Or sin.
or an abomination or an android. All right,
Or colonists.
so let the players.
And the character section is a small little bit on gear. And we mentioned that earlier on in the cast about how there are consumables, for example, air, food, and water, which and power, which can run out on you. I honestly, this one I had a little bit of an issue with. One of the problems I found with the Year Zero system is that it has a possibility for a catastrophic roll. Whenever you roll ones, you take damage for each one of those ones. Sorry, this is in the general Year Zero system, not in Alien specifically. Right. So you have a situation where you could be at 100% health. You're doing great. You have this great fighter. He's big and bulky. He's got a huge sword skill, huge strength skill. He goes to swing it at maybe a tiny little goblin, rolls a bunch of ones, and he just drops down dead right there.
Oh, Achilles, my Achilles. Oh yeah, I felt that.
Obviously, you can get that into the game. You've pushed your roll, so you kind of pushed yourself very hard. I don't know why over this goblin or something, but that's happened to me in Mechatron, where I was winning a fight and then I just collapsed at the end of it, despite winning.
I don't recall a lot of winning in Mechatron. But yeah.
Aliens doesn't have that actually. When you roll ones, it forces the stress mechanics to kick in. So I think that's an improvement on the general Year Zero system. However, with the consumables, that is a possibility. And in fact, there was one night of the game where I had to work late and I couldn't show up. So I was joking with Jeremy and I said, okay, I'll just do my air roll here. And on a Google Dice thing, I rolled all ones. And I was thinking about that. If that had really happened in the game, how do you handle that? Now you're sitting there, you've stocked up, you've got your whole air tank on it, you've walked off the ship, and all of a sudden, ping, psst, it's all gone.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean, and I lost my air so quickly, like you would have thought I had a leak.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and it was fortunate in that the ship does have like some oxygen, and then you can improve the oxygen quality or the air quality, like by replacing the air scrubbers and that. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I can see what you mean. I looked at it and I was like, air, that's great. That's so in keeping. And obviously, you're going to be out
Right.
a lot. But yeah, you could quickly do it. And then it's just like, the old Dungeons and Dragons, the 5-point wizard problem.
Yes, yeah,
or the
exactly.
5-point wizard, where it's just like, okay, I want to get out of the dungeon now.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody, let's go. Yeah. And that's what happened when we ended up triggering something in the adventure.
Right.
That... Well, I think we didn't have to trigger because we said we're but we're like, yeah, I got to get air. Like I can't. I'm done. Like I'm tapped out. Like I walked down this corridor and I'm like, okay, I'm out.
It's I don't want to say that it's a bad mechanic per se, because you can say that you have actually sprung a leak, or you didn't check your air fail enough, or it wasn't full when you thought it was.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You can work in it. I think the main thing to take away from it is just, as if you're running the game as a game master, please keep that in your mind, that at any point in the game, one of your characters, even if they're at full air, they could be out like that.
Right.
They suddenly have no air. And if you're in space, what does that mean? Something just to keep in the back of your mind in case that does happen. How are you going to handle that?
Well, they have you covered because they have suffocation rules in here.
Yeah, exactly.
They're pretty clear. I have zero problem with the suffocation rules. Yeah, makes sense.
I just wish Lyle with his one air would have taken a spacewalk. That would have been great.
I really do. Yeah, why don't we also explore, me freezing to death?
Yeah.
Similar to Forbidden Lands kind of survival mechanics, things can go wrong in that same way, where as you're trying to move across the map, you just have to keep hunting for food because you just keep eating all your food every single time. So in the cinematic, I think it works okay to kind of put the pressure on, just kind of like, make you like do things that you wouldn't do. And basically all in this adventure it was trying to do is get you to take your helmet off so that you're susceptible to other bad things happening.
Yes and no. I really like that about Forbidden Lands, where it's that the consumables, where you can run out of stuff and you need to be constantly on the run for it. And the power systems as well. I mean, that's so in genre, where you're using your motion capture, it's getting closer, and then it blacks out. It's like, oh, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Where is it? That's great. The air specifically, though, is because you suddenly, you have a possibility of suddenly not being able to survive right now. You'll be dead in 10 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But that's space, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that it's not realistic. Again,
Yeah.
it's just something that game masters should be ready for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but a game master can also say, "Oh, turn on your extra,
Yeah.
your extra tank," and like, yeah, you could play that where that's your primary tank, and then you got to fumble. I'm not off it. Off the rule. I really love the consumable rule.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
very
think
elegant.
air is very in keeping. And yeah, of course, if you're in a building with its own environment, or in the ship that has its own environment, you're not constantly rolling air. So but it's definitely when you
Unless
do
you're
your
paranoid like us.
yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So that then they get into, and we said it at the beginning, it's not combat, it's combat and panic.
Right.
And yeah, it gets into time and space. They got stealth mode is important. Sneaking around.
Well, actually, that connects to what we were just talking about. It's similar to the consumable rules in Forbidden Land, like where you have to hunt on the map for things. Stealth mode is it's a very board gamey mode. For reference, it's kind of similar to Pathfinder or D&D, where they have the exploration mode, where you're going through the dungeon, you're doing your check for traps, your stealth rolls, things like that.
Right.
And the rules are set up, like I said, like a board game, where you can choose 2 rooms in the ship that you want to explore. You roll the necessary skills. The enemies also have a 2-room rule, so the game master can move them around as if they're pieces on a game, and the players follow the similar things, and they might meet up. Depends on how long they go. It sounds really interesting, and could give a
That's why I think they emphasize having a map.
Right.
Yeah. I
Like
agree.
once conflict happens, and that's their word, conflict, is like, yeah, it's a good time to have the map out.
Absolutely.
Although you don't need to, but it is a good time.
Right.
Yeah, no, I take your point.
I'm curious, Jeremy, why didn't you do that?
Well, we really quickly ran into the you were asking Mother about life forms, and if I would have taken that, if I would have said no, yeah, she has no idea, there's no way to detect that, because I was kind of torn between the technology of Alien and technology of Prometheus or Covenant, where you have people's life signs, and you have you can detect life forms, or in Alien you just have this motion detector that's just detecting air movement. And once I was giving you, well, there's life forms here, I was like, okay, that's going to get people moving to other places. And the one thing that did bring up, though, is unfortunately that would have revealed the synthetic right away, and so I had to be kind of cagey about that.
Well, what happened was I said, "Mother, give us where are the life forms?"
Right.
So I forget what triggered that, but something I was like, yeah. So what
and
we did is we were in constant communication with this Mother, the ship computer, and I think it had indicated life forms like when we're entering the ship. So then we said, oh, we can use that all the time.
Right.
So then we use it all the time. Like we had a motion tracker, which we never used until the end.
Right.
Because we just went, where are the life forms on the ship?
Right.
And then suddenly the ship kind of opened up for us.
Yeah.
So then we're like, these are all the life forms. So there wasn't.
Yeah,
Like
this is where it's dangerous. This is where it's not.
Oh, it's now
right.
moving, and we used it all the time.
Right.
Not to try to break the game, but it just was like, oh, that would be what my person would do. It's just
Right.
where the life forms.
And I thought with our shortened sessions, and I thought that worked really well to kind of tell you, yeah, you have to go here. So you got to make a plan to go here, and so I kind of in both ways use it to have to hide the synthetic and also try to point you in different directions. And so then we just did group stealth rolls, to kind of trigger whether there would be an encounter or not, because I thought I wasn't going to be able to manage like positioning of that xenomorph. And basically I was putting it on top of you all the time. Like it was just like looming
I think
everywhere.
that was
Okay. Well, because I was thinking there seems to be a contrast.
you wouldn't have noticed an 8-foot xenomorph in the air duct.
Well, apparently we rolled several times and we never saw it. But no, but I can see how the stealth mode, as cool as it sounds, it is like a game in that it might take you out of the role play because it's very meta. We want to investigate this room or this room. There's no discussion of where do we go next or how do we get into this room kind of thing. So,
and there were so many rooms on the ship. You could have crawled that for We could have gone up to like 6 or 8 sessions if you would have like really crawled the ship. And
So I don't have any direct experience with it, but I think that really lends to a very dungeon crawly style of game. So I think this could come as a recommendation for that as well.
Yeah. I think it would be in keeping of. We were kind of got on the ship, and then we immediately like, okay, for the first session we were kind of exploring, and then when we're like, okay, Mother, tell us where the life forms are. All right, here's our plan.
We found the crew, and then that's where all of the exploration just blew apart. Because then it's all right, these people, what are we going to do with them? Do we get them on? There's spores? Yeah. What? Spores?
Yeah.
The interaction and kind of the conflict between the crew itself, like the PC crew, and then also the NPC crew, I think worked well so that not crawling so much and not relying, so much on stealth, except when you wanted to avoid interaction.
Right. I guess if I would to make a recommendation when you're playing the game is if you did what we did, whereas you say, Mother, tell us where all the life forms are, you are radically changing the game. And maybe gets in the adventure. It will reveal who is or isn't a synthetic.
Right.
It will reveal where the aliens are, or things that aren't kind of like aliens. So it will change it where you're not going to be using ambush rules so much. The game master will have to do kind of like things to kind of hide. It was on your back the whole time. It was right behind you. Like a tiny face hugger that was on the...
If you want to keep something like that, then maybe go with movement, because they have that technology with motion tracker. There is movement on deck 6 or something like that. Keep it more vague, as opposed to actual life forms, because then you don't have to worry about
do that.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, then it gets into because it is combat and panic. The combat, so as we described, or like a regular year 0 game, you roll your dice. 6s are successes, 1s aren't, and if you get a 1 on a stress, it'll trigger a panic roll. They have armor, so you wanted to talk about armor. Even your containment suits have at least 2 points of armor. Yeah. Aliens have...
Which saved my life twice.
Have a lot. So how does armor work in this game?
Yeah, so after an attack has been assigned all of the damage, because you can use your multiple successes to add to the damage. Then,
and like a weapon might have, similar to like Forbidden Lands, it might give you 1 damage.
Right.
The pulse rifle, in Aliens, what the Marines use, that gives 2 damage. Yeah.
Right, so you have a base damage stat, and then you can add that 1 point of damage per success that you have, or use those for other effects. But then basically it's just a roll with no push directly against. So successes on your armor then negate damage points that were coming towards you.
Not successes, but damage points.
Yes, right. Yeah, and so I did that a couple of times in the early combat. But if you're dealing with just like 1 damage weapons, it works out to about the same, because you're only adding. Yeah, so it didn't kill anybody or not kill anybody that wouldn't have. But right away I realized you have to resolve the combat, and then the armor comes into play.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they got also rules like coup de grace or coup de grace.
Yeah. Right.
If you're gonna dispatch somebody, you have to make a roll. And I think I wasn't doing this. I was doing a mercy killing, but you need to roll your empathy. So it's like you're gonna kill somebody in cold blood. Then you have to make an empathy roll and succeed.
Yes.
Oh no! If you succeed, then you fail. You fail. Your empathy kicks in. You're I can't do it.
Yeah, there's a guy who'd been torn apart by an alien. Literally, his chest was open, and he also had the zombie virus inside of him. So it's like, can we just put this guy out of his misery?
Yeah, and then I made it, and I made a roll, and somehow I was like, oh, I can't do it. Yeah, even though it was a mercy. No. Then I spent a story point I'm putting him out of his misery. That's right. And then I covered his mouth and his nose. And shh, go to sleep. You can see that in the actual play.
Yes.
And that would have been the second person I killed through suffocation. Yeah. Again. Another mercy. That was also a mercy too. And then the other big thing, of course, there's healing in the game, and there's med kits to work with. And then we get into stress, which is a huge part of the game. Stress and panic. So we've referred to it several times about the stress dice, but maybe the panic rolls. Maybe get into what does that mean? And just a quick review, it's your stress rating, which is the number of stress dice you have, plus a d6.
Right.
As opposed to a multiple of D6s, which is a little bit counterintuitive because I don't think there's any other rolls in the year 0 system like that.
Right.
There was a couple early in our early sessions. There was like, no, it's just the stress rating, not the stress dice.
Yes.
Right. I think that was what was throwing us. We would grab the 2 if we had 2 stress dice, plus our panic roll die, and then no, it's just the 2 rating, and you add that. 6 or below is keeping it together, but yet your stress dice. There was times when I would have like 6 stress dice.
Right.
Which, and just one thing is maybe before each session is review how you get rid of stress, because it's actually not that hard.
Right.
We kept forget. We would just accumulate it, and then you would have to prompt us. You guys want to rest?
Right. This would be a good time to touch that object.
But maybe before each session is to review how you get rid of stress.
Right.
Because it happens, and
and that's something that when we're kind of talking about the character rules, so that mechanic kicks in because in these pre-generated characters, each of them has a signature object. And
that's what it's called.
the signature object is the thing they can interact with to reduce stress on their own. So it's something that all they have to do is take a turn out of combat, out of action, and interact with that item, and then they reduce 1 stress.
Could have used that refreshing.
You were interacting with it the whole time you had your coffee cup.
That's
no,
right.
this was a security card. How do you interact with a security card?
Yeah, one thing. What did you think about the stress? One thing about me is, and this could be actually a really good design, is I stopped wanting to make rolls when there was at a certain point, because I had so much stress, and I was like, "Do you want to make an observation roll?" I'm like, "No,"
right,
because I there's a good chance I could succeed, but then there's also a good chance I would roll 1s on my stress dice and just get even more, or having to roll panic.
It's weird, I didn't feel that at all. I was very lucky with my stress die. I think like 90% of them I rolled where I'm okay, but I cause other people stress. Which
I want to get into that.
Stress grenades. But so for me, it didn't bother me. I didn't feel stressed out about my stress rolls at all.
It's not a complaint, because if that's the goal of that design, then well done.
Absolutely.
Because it had that, where I'm so stressed, maybe I'm kind of freezing, have a little bit of paralysis, or I don't want to do something. You just kind of want to like go into a fetal position or something like that, or whatever. So it's good. I simulated it. And also in the panic table, like what Chris is referring to, or nervous twitch, your stress level and the stress level of all friendly PCs in short range increases by 1. And you're like, wow, that's really unfair. But then you might start to resent somebody. Like they get a nervous twitch and you get stressed, but then you're like, oh, man, well, you have to roll that. Why can't you roll a tremble and then we could ignore you? But you get that. And I was like, again, if that was the design, they're like, hey, that's what happens. You're going to start to resent somebody. And it's like, why did you try to do that?
Yeah.
You knew you were going to fail, and now we're all like super stressed.
PvP.
So what did you think about the panic table?
I thought it was fun in genre. Like I said, I just rolled well, so I didn't have that much interaction with it. It was there for me.
Like when you really fail your panic roll, you can do things like freeze, start screaming, seeking cover, fleeing, even get psychotic. What Chris is referring to is I was the smooth talker. So I was trying to manipulate somebody, but by just talking to them, like kind of like, hey, I'm talking sense to you. Here's the plan. So it wasn't like I was like screaming at them or anything like that. And I failed my roll, and then I had to roll the panic, and I froze, which there was nothing really that would have made my character freeze.
Right.
So what we think is, and it's in keeping with that, is kind of either the game master or the players think of some stock triggers for the panic. So it's not like I froze because I started to make a sentence and I don't know, I got intimidated or something, but I heard something. And it could be a phantom cell. And then you don't have to wait for the game master to go, oh, you froze? Oh, you froze because you heard something. But I just didn't think of it at the time. I just thought, I froze. That's kind of strange. And I kind of stopped, and the scene continued on with me failing and that person walking away because I wasn't really saying anything. And then I'm like, okay, I didn't really freeze, but I kind of need a drink or something. So I'm kind of out of it. But then later I thought, well, why couldn't I just, wait a minute, did you hear something?
Right.
And then kind of like I'm freezing my action because I heard a phantom sound because I'm so stressed. But think of just like, think of some stock things that you can instantly throw in without thinking.
Right.
Because I'm screaming now.
Yes.
But don't go, I'm not really screaming. Like, do that, but think of what triggered that. You know?
And maybe play that. If you have a stress level that's high enough that where you might hit the screaming level on it, if you've got 4 or 5 for it, play your character as being stressed out, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't really suggest that, but yeah, I think that's a good idea, is that this should affect your role play. You should, you should be following that level. I would say my criticism for both the panic table and the critical injury table is kind of the same. It should be, instead of titling it by what happens to you in the panic, or in the case of the critical injury, where you're injured, it should be, this is the effect, here are examples of what would cause that.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So it would kind of reverse it, and so give you a list, and so you can kind of, let's see what kind of makes sense here, instead of, just saying, you're screaming. Well, wait, I was just talking. Why am I? Why would I suddenly scream?
I was imagining something like when you hit a level 3 panic, then here's a list of different kinds of actions that you could imagine, or make up your own.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking make up your own, but Free League is watching. That would be good. I mean, it's a 2. The panic roll is like essentially 2 columns. It's the number and then the effect. But yeah, you could easily put the result, the effect, possible triggers.
Right.
Because it's not necessarily going to be, you were talking to somebody and and sometimes, I mean, I just try to shoot, I miss, and now I'm going to panic and start screaming, but or I run away. But,
Your clip falls out.
Yeah.
That's the one. If you're shooting, you just lose ammo, which is cool. It's also very good for
if you feel
horror
like
genre.
If you use up your full clip, you just keep firing. The thing about the stress is I think it was a failure on our part. I might get into that more when we talk about our specific campaign. Is like we didn't role play certain things as well as we could have. Yeah, certain things happened, and we were kind of more in let's finish this. Let's get this job done, as opposed to
let's not die.
We were kind of like a competent horror group.
Yeah,
it's like it's kind of like the people like, well, I'm not going to go down in the basement.
Right. Who would do
that? Yeah,
I'll go down the basement, but I'm taking this shotgun with me.
I don't think this is the right time to go skinny dipping. I don't know. There's rumors about the lake. Why don't we do that? So the hazards are what you would expect when you have things like air, food, water, and power.
Power.
I've lost power.
Suffocation when you get spaced, or you instantaneously run out of air, like I was saying. Being blown up, being set on fire.
Freezing, dehydrated.
Yep.
Yeah. And disease.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing.
Radiation.
I think, right. Stress, but then also radiation and disease become these things that are just like running out of air, that are kind of pressing on you. So we didn't quite get to that point, but people would have had to start making, fighting, rolls against virulence. So endurance rolls against virulence, because they had, foreign things trying to invade them.
Things. I really like that too. There's in the adventure, if you get infected with the alien virus, then your agenda changes, and the levels are something like "Don't trust the crew, eat the crew," that kind of stuff.
Right.
Synthetics, maybe just go. Their attributes are better. So you remember Bishop in Aliens, who's faster, stronger. They can be prepared. They don't need air, food, water.
Right.
We took advantage of that in the adventure.
Yeah, and they have a different injury table that they roll, because they're affected differently by physical damage.
And then it gives you rules for xenomorphs. Then it gets into the gear. There are what you expect. I mean, they've got the marine rifle. The pistols are what you would expect in science fiction books, where they're like a pistol, but like lots of useless stuff. One
rule with the weapons that didn't come up for us, because I don't think we found anything that had this keyword, but auto-fire. So auto-fire works a little bit differently from, if you're using the incinerator or using a pistol, where if you're firing at auto-fire, you get 2 bonus dice on top of everything that you would normally get, but it immediately raises your stress level.
Well, that's one thing. Maybe we need the cards for the
that would
thing, because we were writing just basic stuff on the character sheet, and you only get like the name, what it adds to hit, the damage, and that's about it.
That's it. Yeah, no characteristics.
It's a common problem in a lot of games. It's like, or the dilemma: how much do you put for the equipment? Is it like a massive chart?
Right.
On the character sheet, and then you've got several pages of the character sheet, or you just keep it really small. So probably the cards would make better.
Yeah, there's not a heavy amount of rules around gear in this system. It's usually 1 or 2 keywords per weapon.
Yeah. Food and drink was kind of neat because they said, "Hey, coffee's free
Right.
on the ship."
Everything else.
But if you want like water, it's going to cost you a lot of money and stuff. So.
Yeah, and I wonder in campaign if that really comes up. That's another survival mechanic is, you have a certain amount of money, and if you're not going to get paid for this next job, can you afford to eat or can you afford to continue? You're going to be hurting yourself by just kind of starving.
That's when you take those dirty corporate jobs. It's only picking up some samples from this weird planet. What could go wrong?
So we get into the Chariot of the Gods, and there's going to be spoilers. So what was the situation? What's the basic premise of Chariot of the Gods?
There's an alien.
No,
Yeah, so
spoiler.
so similar to the first Alien movie, you're a crew on a ship, and you're kind of on a special mission. In Alien, they were on a pretty straightforward, just hauling mission, but this is a special request mission, and you, of course, then get a distress signal that you're forced to answer. Everything is working towards you having to respond to this or losing your pay, losing the any compensation for the job. You're on the Montero. All the PCs start as the crew of the Montero, and then they encounter the Kronos. And the Kronos is a ship that has been just out of existence for like 73 years. It's been kind of historically people have learned about it. It was a famous science expedition, but nobody knows what happened to it. And so you're answering a distress call that turns out to be that ship. And so then the crew has to decide, how they're going to handle this. They are given immediately. Their mission goes from hauling to you have to do these 3 things as a salvage mission. So you have to secure any samples or data, rescue any humans, and actually tow the ship itself back to the nearest station.
Yep.
And so that's where things immediately kind of start off.
Yeah. So I thought that was a nice setup. It's similar enough to Alien that you're like, I'm playing an Alien game, but it is different where you're like, but I don't exactly know what I'm going to encounter, except aliens, of course. Yeah. So adding that extra ship added it, I think, an extra dimension. And I think, in the movie, like Alien, they know the ship. So the characters in that are moving around a place that they know.
Right.
Now we're starting this game new, so having that foreign ship for us to explore was good because our characters would not know the ship or would be as familiar with the ship as we would be. Because you're like, okay, we get the blueprints. Okay, now we got to keep referencing the blueprints. Whereas if it had taken place on the Montero, like we would know that we were in that ship for at least 6 months.
Right.
Like I may have been the novice of that, but it was still, you're in 6 months in a small environment. You know where everything is.
Right.
So you're like, okay, let's just do this. And if something is different or looks strange, you're going to notice it right away. Yeah. So I really like that setup. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, that is the setup. It was good.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, then we were exploring on the new ship. We started to find things that were wrong. We found a body with strangely elongated limbs and missing a head. We found some cryopods which had been broken open and some that weren't, some that were still operational with people inside.
Yeah.
So we opened those up, and that's where everything started going wrong.
I like that. I like the thing that... they have these things, I think they're called abominations in the story. We were calling them zombies because, hey, we didn't know. Sorry to misclassify you. But they were different, like longer arms. They had blown, the first thing we encountered had blown its head off. So that was different. Like we know it's an alien story. We know we're going to encounter an alien, but this is different. This is a wrinkle.
Right.
Encountering the crew caused the first clash of what to do with the crew. And I thought that was a nice dilemma because you're going to want to rescue. So we had somebody who was like, I wanted to secure the assets, and the assets happened to be part of the assets were the crew who have valuable knowledge. You wanted to just help people.
Yeah, they're people, so I wanted to save them.
So I thought that instantly raised a very natural clash because people who were probably watch too many alien movies were like, we don't want to take these people onto our ship. So, but I thought I really liked that clash. And again, that was a different thing because, in Aliens, they only encounter Newt, who's not who's clearly okay,
Right.
right? So, but they don't. Everybody else is clearly like not okay,
Right.
or Newt
Mm-hmm.
in Aliens. And in Alien, they don't have that thing. So it was both fresh and familiar. So I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So it's a nice setup.
Then we managed to, I managed to convince everyone that we need to take them back to our ship. So we tried to go back there, but then the airlock wouldn't open. And then our ship blew up. Mother overloaded the engines on our ship, trapping us on the new ship.
Yeah, so there is that thing where if the people, once you get on the Cronus, you're going to stay, which is the new ship, you're going to stay on that ship.
Right. Right.
And if you try to go back, even though we were only going back for air, because I immediately ran out for air, then the mother's like, no, you can't get back on the ship, and this is going to self-destruct.
Yep.
And people familiar, I think it was an Alien, where mother's like not letting Ripley override.
Right.
Yes, yeah,
The reactor is cooling down, and it's like, same thing. So it's in keeping with Alien. So you're like, hey, that's from Alien.
Well, that was the thing. Like at that point, this is what we wanted to do, and the game just said, no, you cannot take this. You have to follow this path. So I thought that it felt a little bit railroady in that, but I completely accepted it, and I really liked that. It felt very genre appropriate. It was exactly what would happen in an Aliens movie. So even though the game forced us in one direction, it felt good. It was. Yeah,
it felt good. Yeah. We lost our captain. Yeah, good. Yeah. No, I agree. I 100% agree. It was clearly, the game was clearly confining us to the ship and forcing our action. But yeah, okay, that's what it did. You know, my mother misunderstood what we were doing, but that was fine.
Yeah.
And again, like I thought we had some really good reactions to that. So I think you would probably get that same reaction in a lot of groups, like a really natural, hey, we're frustrated, but not, hey, we don't hate you.
No, we hated each other.
Yeah, too busy.
And then I suppose after that, the doctor from the new ship, his head exploded and an alien crawled out.
Right.
Yeah. So that was frightening.
That was Act 1.
That was frightening.
No, we described this very quickly, but that actually took us, a 4-hour session?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that's what you do. You're basically you're going to get confined on the Kronos, and then what you got to do is get the Kronos back up and running, get the reactor going, getting the air scrubbers, and then it'll set you on a course for Earth. But you're still trapped with all of these like aliens, xenomorphs, and then the crew. Crew have all been received inoculations, but that makes them turn into these abominations. So it's a creature you might not be familiar with if you're just looking at the Alien movies.
Right.
At least I haven't seen Prometheus or Covenant.
Yeah, so that's what that is. They're combining. So basically the setting, because they're using neomorphs, which are the kind of the white aliens, and then the abominations, it's a combination of the black goo from Prometheus and that xenomorph that's born. And I think in Covenant, it becomes a full like black shell alien, but they show that white colored alien. I guess it's the David designed version.
Okay.
That they're referencing. But so they gave you like kind of those two things. So they were kind of overlapping and confusing threats, because it's like, so what does the vaccine do? The vaccine is causing these zombies, but it's also reducing it's killing anybody that's exposed to the spores. So they were doing these like this kind of overlapping
I like
thing.
that. I mean, it was a mystery.
Yeah, right.
So we're like trying to figure it out. It also causes clash, because then you're like, why don't we just kill them all? But you're like, well, we don't know. I mean, we're not scientists or anything. Like, they turned into abomination. I mean, everybody's going to turn into abomination.
Well, yeah, there's the whole thing. Okay. The doctor kept insisting like this keeps everyone safe. They won't get impregnated by aliens if we give them this inoculation. But people who've gotten the inoculation also turn into zombies. So does that mean the inoculation doesn't work? That's what's causing it? Does it work? Should we take this inoculation ourselves?
Well, I think we swiftly decided not to take the inoculation. But yeah,
we know the movie
there
well
is an
enough
option.
Yes,
I mean, to do that. So I really like that. But can we talk about and it'll play out how you think. There's also a third, or
a third 5 minutes.
Third ship.
Right.
Which you can or cannot bring into the session.
Right, yeah. You kind of decide, because if people are busy enough with negotiating with the crew of the Kronos and dealing with the xenomorphs, then that's not necessary. But if everybody's dead and there's a PC that's going to die, that's the way to introduce NPC. You could play this NPC that just boarded your ship.
Yeah.
Right.
The way it's laid out in each act, it's like, here are some mandatory things that you need to do in the act. But then there's a lot of optional things.
Yes, right.
So,
right.
yeah, I like that because some of them, it allows the game master, okay, this is going to overwhelm the players.
Yes, yeah.
Or, yes, you can hold it back, or if the players look like they're bored or they're like blazing through everything, it gave a lot of options in which to add.
Yeah,
so
it gives you
that was good.
Good variety. Yeah, I wish, the only thing that I wished for is maybe a little bit more if this, then this kind of thing.
Okay.
So that there was connections between, if you're, kind of make these things happen, and to just kind of give you a little direction, because it does feel a little bit random. Okay, your ship blows up. Okay, another ship, just boards you, just to give a little bit more connection story-wise.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, like the big thing was the synthetic reveal. I guess that was from Ash from the very first movie. Nobody knew he was a synthetic, and then they knock his head off, and he is. Yeah.
Right.
So, but they have that.
Right.
But in the rules, it's the person acts like and doesn't play under synthetic rules while they're hidden.
Yes. Right.
And the only way you would be able to see is like if they get critical damage, and then their milky blood comes out.
And theoretically, if they don't get their agendas beforehand, they wouldn't even know they're a synth, right? Because
I think you're supposed to tap them in the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning, you kind of
we
choose.
Didn't do that,
okay.
Yeah. You kind of choose, and also the synthetic can be played as an NPC, so no player character has to deal with that.
But they'll get so the person picks the pilot, for example, and then the game master says, okay, here's your real agendas, and you're a synthetic in the employ of a rival corporation called I forget the name of the corporation, but the synthetic's name is Lucas.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what you guys think. I don't know.
The adventure itself, or
the synthetic aspect.
That was cool. I liked it. They did that in some of the movies. I think Aliens Resurrection, they used the synth hooking up to the computer system to take over Mother and stuff. So yeah, it fit in the genre. I thought it was a cool twist at the end, in that we didn't have to just deal with the alien coming at us, but we also had to deal with this other ship, and now one of our own crew is turning against us. It was kind of a tidal wave of problems coming at us. It was good. It was a fun twist. I wasn't expecting it to happen. So,
I thought it was cheating a bit because it doesn't play by the same. They don't play by synthetic rules, so there's no way you can really tell it's a synthetic. I mean, you also you're with them for 6 months. You never notice that they're synthetic, and then
they didn't in the first movie either.
Yeah, but in the first movie, they're not really there as a synthetic. They're there as Ash is Burke in Alien. That's its main role is really the company agent. Yeah, or the company, the traitor, just like Burke. And then they made in a later rewrite of the script, they inserted the synthetic idea, and I think that was there just to be like a visual shock. Because you knock its head off, and it's like he doesn't like collapse to the ground. His head like goes off like a chicken. So it was a visual shock. So it's not really important that he's a synthetic. I think in Aliens they try to make it important, but in that movie, I don't know. It just kind of feels like if you compare it to a movie like The Prestige, and you get the reveal, and then they kind of show you back, and it's like, hey, we were telling you the whole time. We actually had Michael Caine say, you can't do it any other way but the way that they reveal, and then you're like there. But here it's like if the rules are telling you, like, play it as that, and you're watching the person roll the dice and making panic rolls and stuff like that. I don't know. I know it's a way to hide it, but it kind of feels cheap when it's revealed. In my respect, in my opinion.
No, I think that that is a difficult, because they don't give you much information about how to play that, or that you should be giving the rest of the crew clues.
Yeah, I mean, so then when it is revealed and you're like, it's a synthetic, then you're just like, oh, okay, it's a synthetic.
Yes.
All right. And we actually found out by going, Mother, where are the life forms? And it's like, oh, you don't read it. And then it's a synthetic. And it was kind of like that.
Right.
Okay. And then you're like, is that going to be important? I don't know.
That was a session I missed too. So I was watching the cast afterwards, and then like suddenly they're talking about synthetics. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So and I didn't know the rules, and I was like, oh, that kind of feels like cheating. It kind of feels like you as the game master cheated. And I'm like, no, that's in the rules.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's a difficult thing for the player that's playing the synthetics also to deal with. Yeah, because there's not enough to really say what you want to do, and that's why we kind of screwed around with the trader rule at that point too. It's like let's see, because this may continue, but I guess that was the PvP moment, like, Rye fleeing was the reveal, and we kind of like
I think in some of the agendas of the other players, it kind of feels like it was forcing something. Like yours was like sacrifice yourself.
Mine was save the crew, sacrifice yourself if necessary.
And then Davis, the pilots, was like kill people if necessary. So it was like everything seemed like, hey, if the company agent, because nobody actually opposed the company agent, like my agenda. So I was like, oh, okay, great. So I'll help everybody because everybody's fine with my agenda. Yeah, let's work together. So they're like, everything was kind of set up to have a trader moment, and it's like, or this. And here's the thing: there's no medicals in Yutani. It's like somebody joins the crew, and they're like, hey, let's give this person a medical.
Well, they had a high comtech, so they defeated all medical.
Yeah, it's like they hacked it in, and just like, whatever. Yeah. I think. A suggestion, and play the Android, because it had that experience, and maybe you'll have a better experience. And like Chris thought it was cool. Chris is wrong. Chris is wrong.
How do you spell dismissive?
Yeah, sorry, but I think that trader could have worked as a company agent.
Yeah,
but then they want to do it where you revealed, but we don't want to have a Burke where you just kind of put him in a closet.
Yeah, right.
And close the door on him. They're like, no, but now he's like. Or
now he's super NPC.
Yeah, now
taking over
like
the ship.
Super strong.
That said, if you put the synth as a corporate agent, I think as opposed to like that's unfair, I didn't see that coming. Everybody's going like, saw that coming.
No, I misunderstand. It's like you have the rival corporate agent as the infiltrator, because then you don't have the problem of, hey, the person's never eating. Or they don't need air, or they don't make panic tests.
Right.
So you have the rival corporation plant, but it's a human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to have all of these. Again, I'm going to say unfair. Bending of the rules where the person's making all of these rolls, and it's like, I guess I'm panicking.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, or maybe have guidelines like, hey, you can roll the dice, but then they never really panic.
Yeah,
or something.
And I think that was something, because if Rye's character, or if Rye would have had some major event on the panic, he was like, are you going to fake that? And the only clue
sorry, go ahead.
But the only clue that I was kind of giving you is with the confrontation with the first neomorph. The first target was the synthetic, and immediately it was uninterested.
I saw that. I sniffed him and then walked away. I took that as maybe he's been impregnated or got like the disease. But
remember, it hissed at me?
Yeah, well, that was the rolls.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It ended up hissing at everybody, but the idea was it would have stayed in combat.
I think we enjoyed the adventure.
Yeah, it's just great fun.
It was a good adventure. I do have that quibble, but I recommend you play it with it. But there's certainly ways the next time you play it that you can work around. Of course, everybody knows the reveal.
I think if you or any of your group are fans of the Aliens, this is a really good choice, because I really, really did feel like I was playing in an Alien movie. It sold itself well. Yeah.
All right, and if you've played the Chariot of the Gods and had a similar experience or a different experience, please comment below. Yes. Am I out of line?
Okay.
Okay. Okay. One thing. One thing, because I do think this is important, and I forgot. And we had a different play experience, and they recommend you play it as a one shot, and they recommend you play the cinematic plays as one shots, like one session, and that's actually really good advice. And I can see why they would do it. And unfortunately, we couldn't just because of our work schedules and that, so we had to break it up into 4 sessions. But to doing that, I mean, for at least 2 major reasons. And one is, if you're doing it like everything is kind of being thrown at you, you start to get, even as a player, not just the character, more irrational.
Yes.
Whereas there were points where, like, for example, the third session ended with somebody saying, "Oh, let's murder them," and I'm like, okay, and then break.
Yes.
Cliffhanger, and then you're like kind of thinking, what's a rational way to deal with? Like, what's a way to satisfy what they want? So it gave us time, like it gave us a week to think of a rational way to deal with problems, whereas we would have kind of quickly like, okay, all right, let's go, let's do it, or then we would have had an immediate conflict. So I think it would have been more in keeping, like we wouldn't have been as competent. That's one reason. And also it is a kind of antagonistic style of game, which is fine if it's for a one shot because everybody's doing that. But if you have to go week in after week, it might kind of wear at you. It's like, oh, now I get to go fight with people at the table.
That was a piece of advice that I was going to give towards the adventure is that take that on board. Like, it's an antagonistic flavor. You have competing agendas and competing rivals and buddies and stuff. Play that up. Go ahead, let your player be an asshole because he's not going to survive. So
and I think that's easier to do in a one shot. But if you're like, I got to go back into the lion's den and fight people, and my one ally is not showing up for this session. Oh, good.
Or you've been PvP'd
I'm outnumbered.
in the first session and you have to skip the next 3.
So they actually give the advice in there, and I think it's really good advice. Don't miss that advice, and certainly try to do it. I think it would be a fantastic. Hey, maybe play it at night. They don't say that, but that might help too.
Oh yeah.
All right.
With cool mood lighting.
Yes.
In addition to the actual play, we will be doing a campaign confession where we'll talk about our experiences in the actual play with Chris and John joining us. And when the full rule set comes out, we are planning on doing a full review of that as well. So look forward to that.
Well, if you like this review, please like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and we also have a website, Idle Red Hands, where we post things there, and we do have a YouTube channel. We do have an actual play.
Yes.
4 sessions, so 4-part.
Right.
Which you're probably watching on one of these.
Right.
And whichever one you're watching.
Sure to know of one of these things.
And for this session, we've already made a player reference and a printer-friendly character sheet if you want to make it a little bit easier on your printer to actually try this game out.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.